Good evening and welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Ray Paparotti from Life Point Church International, and I'm glad that you're joining me on this Monday night, April the 27th, for part 3 of the stages of renewal. As we've been looking through the book, through the 21st chapter of John, there's so much that we see in there in Jesus' discourse with Peter that applies to renewal. That God would bring such a change in us, such a revival in our hearts and in our lives that would cause us to completely change direction and be moved in a new way. Over the past few days, we saw some of the first steps, the first stages of renewal, including returning back to that which was true, returning to our calling, having Jesus restore us, and now that brings us to tonight. The third stage of renewal is in the word reevaluation. Reevaluation. So if you have your Bibles, I want you to turn with me to John chapter 21. We're going to be reading from verses 15 through 17, okay? John 21, starting at verse 15 through 17. If I can just bring you up to speed, Peter is having this encounter after denying Jesus, and Jesus has restored him. Peter has experienced this miraculous catch of fish, which he brings to the shore. And after breakfast, we pick up in verse 15, it says, "So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?' Peter said, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' And Jesus said to him, 'Tend my lambs.' He said to him again a second time, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' He said to him, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' And Jesus said to him, 'Shepherd my sheep.' He said to him a third time, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' Peter was grieved because Jesus had said it to him 3 times, 'Do you love me?' And he said to him, 'Lord, you know all things, and you know that I love you.' Jesus said to him, 'Tend my sheep.'" We're going to read, after we read that portion, I want us to see for a moment what happens next in this shift of our ideology as we start to look at our lives and say, how can I move towards a renewal? How can my mind be completely cleansed, my mind be made right so that I can live in revival no matter what's happening in the condition of my life? We see that Jesus' questions towards Peter are very piercing. Jesus brings to Peter a re-evaluation. Now he says to him in verse 15, he says, "Peter, Simon Peter, son of John, do you love me more than these?" What does Jesus mean by the word these? A lot of people have broken down these verses and have interjected their thoughts and ideas. Some people believe that Jesus was saying to Peter, "Peter, do you love me more than these other disciples?" I would like to just clarify that for a moment. I don't believe that Jesus was asking Peter to prioritize and say that, bring up this kind of a conversation whether Peter loved Jesus more than the other disciples loved him, because Jesus had already settled this issue in Mark chapter 9. And we're going to turn there for a moment. Mark chapter 9, beginning at verse 33. This is really interesting. Look what it says. Jesus and the disciples, they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he began to question the disciples. He said to them, "What were you discussing on the way?" But they were silent on the way, for they had discussed with one another which of them was the greatest. Sitting down, he called the 12, and he said to them, "If anyone wants to be first, he will be the least of all and the servant of all." So we can see there, Jesus is not trying to lift up one disciple over the next disciple and start a war with them to see which one loves him more. So what does Jesus mean by that? Do you love me more than these? Well, if you will remember with me what had just happened, Peter came to shore. Jesus was there cooking, having a fire, cooking fish. And Jesus said to Peter, bring some of those fish. And the scripture is very specific in what happened. Peter ran to the shore. He grabbed the net. He dragged it all the way to Jesus. And they even give the number of fish that were there. It says that when they brought them there was 153 fish in the net. So Jesus is asking Peter, looking at those fish, he says to Peter, do you love me more than those fish? Now, at just a quick glance, that looks like a foolish question. Why would Jesus be asking him if he loves him more than he does those fish? Remember why Peter went fishing. Peter went fishing to run away from what he was supposed to do, to get away from the call of his life. And so now Jesus is bringing this reevaluation to Peter and saying, listen, if you're going to follow me now, do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than doing what you did before I came into your life? And that is the third place to be, this reevaluation that will bring a mighty renewal in our life. In essence, it's a question about priorities and the position of those things. Whatever stands in the way in our own lives between Jesus and his plan for our life is one of these things. The good thing about the time that we are in is that pandemics and quarantines are perfect times to reevaluate our lives and the matters of importance. The reevaluation process is simple enough, but terribly challenging. Reevaluation for us is only effective when we can see one of these three things happen in progression here. The importance, the direction, and the outcome of each comparison. I want to break these apart for you today. Once we factor in our eternity as our comparison to everything in our life, the earthly pleasures seem trivial and fleeting. The first thing I want to bring here is the importance of eternity. How important is eternity to you? Now, this should seem easy in any comparison of anything in this life. Our life on earth is momentary, but eternity is everlasting. So if we take that comparison, we find that the greatest of importance in any part of our life should be eternity. Because as this life passes, if we are given grace enough to last a full long life, we would live what? 80, 90, 100 years. But once this life is over, eternity begins. And there is no ending there. So the importance of eternity is strong. Now, the second matter is the direction of eternity. Once we see the importance of eternity, we see the direction unfolding in our life, which means this: everything that we do should direct our efforts towards eternity. Everything that we do. Our workplace, our job, our schooling, our friendships, our relationships, our marriage, every part of our life should push us towards living in eternity. Eternity should move everything in our life. The third matter is the outcome of eternity. And what I mean by the outcome is living for and towards eternity allows for there to be the results and power manifested in our life from the eternal. If we give the importance to the eternity, if we give direction to eternity in everything that we do, then we find that we are living under the power of eternity. And that is what brings renewal, revival in our life, is when we are fueled by power from eternity manifested in our now, because we have straightened and reevaluated our priorities. The question then comes to our life in full force. Do we love him more than our addictions? Do we love Jesus more than our own families? Do we love Jesus more than our own lusts? Do we love Jesus more than our own material gains? Do we love Jesus more than our own political views? Do we love Jesus more than having our own way? We must do some reevaluating. What an apt time to reevaluate what we truly desire. I pray for each one of us that what we truly desire is Christ, as to bring renewal in our life now. There was a poem that was penned in 1922. It was left on a piano in the Shea home by Bev Shea, who wanted her son George Beverly Shea to find it and to change the trajectory of his life. The lyrics of this poem inspired George so much that he read it every day. He took it to heart. He sat at the piano one day and he began singing the words of this poem and put music to this poem. And the direction in his life from daily meditating on it did in fact change. He was presented a very popular musical career with NBC, but he rejected that to go around the world with evangelist Billy Graham. And everywhere he went, he sang this hymn that he wrote from the words in this poem that his mother left on the piano for him. These are the words to that hymn. I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather be his than have riches untold. I'd rather have Jesus than houses or lands. I'd rather be led by his nail-pierced hands than to be the king of a vast domain or be held in sin's dread way. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today. I'd rather have Jesus than men's applause. I'd rather be faithful to his dear cause. I'd rather have Jesus than worldwide fame. I'd rather be true to his holy name than to be the king of a vast domain or be held in sin's dread way. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today. He's fairer than lilies of rarest bloom. He's sweeter than honey from the comb. He's all that my hungering spirit needs. I'd rather have Jesus and let him lead than to be the king of a vast domain or be held in sin's dread sway. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today. The reevaluation part is so important. My prayer for you tonight is that you're able to say, in the spirit of renewal, I would rather have Jesus than anything. God bless you tonight. Join me again tomorrow night for the fourth part in Stages of Renewal. God bless you.